Hello everybody, my name is Kyle Lee, aka Kilo Loco from kiloloco.com, and today we're going to be going over SQLite, local databases, and SQLite or SQLite or whatever you want to call it. That's what we're going to be going over. I'm going to be using Xcode 9, Swift 4. I'm going to be using this framework called sqlite.swift on GitHub. And then the skill level I set to intermediate, only because I'm trying to make these videos a little bit shorter, so the UI is going to be already done for you, or well, it's already going to be done when we head over to the project. And all you really need to know to move forward and follow this tutorial is know how UI alert controllers work. You don't need them for SQLite, but it's just how I implemented them throughout the tutorial. So yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Akshay Ambikar. Hopefully I said your name okay, or at least close. They are the ones that wanted to see SQLite along with a couple of other people, but yeah, they were the first one to mention it. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's close this up. We're going to head over to the project, and as you're going to notice, this is all we got going for us right now. So we just have 5 buttons. If you want to go ahead and take a look at the storyboard, it's just 5 buttons, you know, keeping it real nice and simple. Nothing's pinned. As you can see, they are hooked up. Everything's hooked up. So we have the create table. This one's hooked up. Create tapped, right? Insert table. This is the part where I said that you're going to probably need to know how UI alert controller works, because all we're going to do is when we insert a user, it's going to be done through the alert controller. So we're just going to type in a name like hello, or like Bob, and then we're going to type in an email like bob@aol.com, and then we'll submit it. So right now, as you can see, all it's doing is just printing those names. Nothing's happening, nothing's being persisted. Same thing with list users, you know, it's connected, update users, and insert users. Pretty much the same exact code, right? Pretty much the same exact code, just changing things up a little bit. So this is also connected. I'll let you see that. We're going to be putting in a user ID like 5, and then we'll say we're going to update their email to, like, say it was Bob, so now it's going to be billy@aim.com. You guys probably don't even know what AOL and AIM are for the youngsters. And then we'll have delete, which is also going to be an alert, and we're going to type in a number, once again like 5, and then we'll delete that user. So I hope that makes sense. I hope it's not too complicated, but that cuts down on like at least 15 minutes of unnecessary stuff. So let's get into where we actually start getting SQL or SQLite into our project. So what we're going to do is head over to your browser, head over to GitHub, and you're just going to type in sqlite.swift. Should be the first one. Make sure you check. If you aren't sure which one it is, it's the one with a bunch of stars. Go ahead and click on that. Now this one is currently ready for Swift 3. So if you want to do Swift 4 like me, and there's no changes in the actual code that to implement it, but if you want to use Swift 4 and you're using Xcode 9, if Xcode 9 beta is still going, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go down and go into these manual instructions, which is what we're about to do right now. So what it says is pretty much we have to go over to our branches. We have to go to the Swift 4 branch. And then what we do is we download this bad boy. So download that zip. Download it. Alright, so I'm going to just pull this over here. Somebody just got shot. No, I'm just joking. I don't know what that was. It's still kind of close to 4th of July, so that's probably what it was. Alright, so what we want to do, clear that out. Now that we have the actual thing, we're going to want to open it up. And you're going to go to the SQLite Xcode project. And it gives you a description on how to do everything. Or like a picture. It shows you how to do everything right here. Bam. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So let's go back to our Xcode, and since it's all open and ready, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and click, drag, and we're gonna drop it over here. I'll just put it underneath the products, and here it is. Alright, so that's not it. We also have to go over to your actual build, your project file, right? You're gonna scroll down all the way to the bottom where it says linked frameworks and libraries. Click the little plus. You're gonna hit the platform that you want it for. Make sure it's under workspace. We're gonna be working with iOS today, so I'm gonna use the iOS SQLite. Go ahead and add that. Now we go up to embedded binaries. We're gonna do a plus on that, and what we want to do is we want to make sure we get the SQLite framework, the iOS framework, and make sure this is under products. So go ahead and click that and you add, and you'll notice that you have 2 right here, 1 right there, and that's all you need to do to get it into your project. So let's go over to the view controller, and what we'll do is we'll import SQLite, and what we want to do is we want to build just to see if this works, because if it doesn't, Kyle's gonna be kind of sad. That doesn't mean anything just yet. We have to wait for it to actually build, see what Xcode decides to do with it, and see if that works. See how it's building, and that error went away. Alright, so it looks like we have successfully got into our project. This will probably go away. Now what we can do is we can start implementing it. Now the way that we want to start implementing it is we actually have to create we have to create a location for you to store all this information. We have to create a location for you to store your database and your tables. So what we're going to do is we're going to use File Manager, and we're going to use that so that we can choose a location inside the app on the user's device that the database can be stored to. So let's go ahead and get that going. Alright, so we'll do let document directory equal file manager dot default dot URL, and you're gonna want to choose, let's see, this one. So we're gonna want to do for file manager search path directory in, and then appropriate for and create. So go ahead and click on this one. It'll autocomplete. This one we're gonna just do document directory in user domain mask appropriate for, we're just gonna do nil. We don't need to specify any special URLs or anything like that. And then create true, just in case there isn't a file, which there isn't. It'll create that file for us. So if I'm correct, this one should throw. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap it in a do, try, catch block, whatever you call those things, and we'll just print the error if there are any. And what we'll do is we'll command option and then square bracket left, you know, drop it in there, and now we can try it. Right, so now we have a document directory. Now we need to actually create, we need to create a file URL for the for our database, pretty much. So let's go ahead and do that by doing let file URL. I like to do like this, camel case everything, and we'll do document directory dot let's see, we want to append components, right? And we're just gonna call this, we're gonna do database for users, so this will be our users table. So we'll call it users, and then dot add, or no, append, I'm sorry, append with extension. And the extension, I'm gonna do SQLite 3, And the only reason I'm using SQLite 3 is because that's what it suggests in the in Swift or sqlite.swift documentation. They specify the connection to SQLite 3 file, so that's I'm gonna just follow their conventions. You can feel free and experiment with different extensions, but this is what I'm going to use because that's what the documentation says. Alright, so now what we want to do is we have to do just like they did in the documentation. We want to try to make a connection and create a database. So let database equal try connection, and we'll actually initialize this connection with a path, and we'll use our file URL path. So file url.path. And let me close out this left window because I don't think we're going to be going back and forth very much, and it gives you guys a better view of the screen in my personal opinion. Alright, so now we have this database. As long as everything went well, we have this database. So what we're going to do is we want to have access to this database throughout the code. So let's go ahead and make a global property. We'll call it database, and this will be of type connection. And now we can set this database to our global database. Right? There we go. Alright. So now what we're gonna, so all we did right here was we create a file, and we're creating it with this file name and this extension, and that's going to be stored locally on the user's device. Now we're creating, with the connection, we're creating a database that's going to be saving everything to that file. So that's why we have the connection right here to the database, and then we're just storing this database right here so that we can access it in all of these different functions. So right now there's not anything too much that we can really test, so let's keep going. We're going to go into the create table, and for the create table, let me just pull up my notes. Okay, so for the create table, what we have to do is we're gonna grab our database, and we're gonna all this stuff in sqlite.swift is all like wrapped in throws. So everything that you do is gonna be like a do catch. So just keep that in mind. So what we're gonna do is we have to create our we have to specify how we're gonna create our table. So we'll do let create table. This is gonna be kind of like an action. And this is going to equal self.users. Oh, well, hold on, we don't have a users property yet. Okay, so that's another thing that we need to go over real quick. So we have a database, but right now we don't have any of our columns, right? So we need to actually have like the properties of our columns, and we have to type those out. So let's go ahead and make those right now. So we have actually these will all be lets, I believe. So we're gonna have a users table in our database, right? So we'll call it users table. And this is going to be equal to, guess what? Yeah, table. And the way that you initialize table is with a name. So users, right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Next, we want to specify what properties that we actually want to have in our table, like what columns we want to have in our table. So obviously we need an ID, right? So we'll do that. And this is expression of type int, and then we're going to initialize, wait, how did I do this? Let me double check how I did it because the formatting's a little bit weird. int, and then we want to say ID. Okay, yeah, so what we're doing is the columns for SQLite are specified through expressions. And with an expression, you have to state what kind or what type the expression is. So since our ID for each of the rows is going to be a number, we're going to do it through an integer. If you're going to have like thousands upon thousands, maybe do like an int 64. But that's mainly up to you. For this example, we're just going to use an integer. And we're going to do the same thing with the other properties. So what I wanted to do, if you noticed, is I want to have a name and an email, and that's what's going to make up a user's row. It's going to be their name, their email, and their ID. So let's go ahead and add those. Name is equal to an expression, and this is going to be of type string. And one little note here is that you can actually make your expressions optional. So you can just put in like an optional string. You could do it like that, so that you know, maybe you're not always getting a string. Maybe it's optional value or something, right? And the expression column title is going to be name, right? And we'll do the same thing with email. Expression also going to be of type string, and we're gonna call this email. Okay, so now we have our table and we have the columns that are in that table. So let's go ahead and create our table. So let's create our task that we're gonna be running. So let create table equal self.users table dot, we're gonna actually do create, and we want to do this one, create with a block, and this is the table builder. So let's go ahead and do enter, and we'll do enter one more time to complete this closure, and we'll just call this table, right? So now we have to actually add those properties into our table. So what we want to do is we want to do table dot column, and then we're gonna do table column, and then we're gonna enter in whatever expression or value that we wanted to put in. So we're just gonna go through each of those, each of our properties up here. Column. I want to make sure, okay, it's not auto completing, so we'll just do this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say self.user, or we're gonna do self.id, right? Because we have the ID of the user, and then we want to make sure that this is unique. So we have to specify that we want it to be unique, and that it's going to be our primary key. Well, the primary key is a unique key, so primary key, and we'll just say true. Is it uppercase like that? No, it's lowercase. It should be lowercase. So this is pretty much what's going to number our column, or number our rows. We have to add in the other two as well. So dot column, and we're gonna just say self dot name, and then for the email dot column, what we can do is just to switch it up a little bit. We'll specify self dot email, right, just like how it is with name. But what we can do is we can specify that it is unique. You don't have to do this, but you can. It has the option to do it, so you can specify that it is unique, and you can say that it's true, right? Because the name might not be unique. This should work. Yeah. The name might not be unique, right? There might be two Kyles, but there should never be two users with the same email, because then that's probably the same user, right? So that's one extra thing. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about customizing your columns. You can add limits and all these other things that you normally would do with your databases. But you know, we're not going to get too deep into that. I just wanted to kind of show you some of the things that are possible. All right, let's continue. So now, like I said, everything's wrapped in like do try blocks. So we'll catch and we'll print error. All right, so what we're gonna try to do is we're gonna try to create this table. So all we have to do is we have to do our database run, and then we say whatever test that we want to run. So let's try that. Try self dot database dot run, and we're gonna say create table, and if that's successful, then we can just print out created table. Now this won't really show too much when I run it right here, but if it gets to the created table point, then we know that we were able to successfully run this create table task through our database, and that we were able to create the table. Now we won't really be able to see anything until we actually start listing or actually inserting users into our table. So created table. So we have created the table. Now if we try to create it again, you'll get an error, and it will notify you that there already is a users table you know, in this file. Now if you wanted to change files, which you could do up here, if you wanted to change files, then you could you know, create a whole nother table. Maybe you want to have like a dev environment and then a production environment, and you could do things like that. But yeah, if the table already exists, it's not going to let you make another one. So this piece for creating a table is pretty much already done. That's all you really need to do to create a table. Alright, so for the part where we actually want to insert a user, now this part is just as easy. All you have to do is once again create a task, and you just run that task. So let's go ahead and do that. So let insert user equal, once again, self.users table dot insert, and we're going to actually specify the I don't see the one that I want. I think it's just values. We're gonna insert the values, and the way that we're gonna do is we have to take each of these that are non-optional and set them. So let's go ahead and do that. So since ID is the primary key, it will auto increment, and we don't need to insert that. But for the other ones, we do have to. So we'll do name and email. Now the way that we do that is, also keep in mind that these are expressions, these aren't actual values. So like if I was trying to set the name to Kyle, setting self.name equal to Kyle, that it doesn't work like that, because it's an expression, not a string. And you'll see that right here. So the way that we do that is we have to specify self.name, and then they have their own operator that returns, it's like return but to the left, and you just put in whatever the value that you want to pass. So name, and the name that this is an actual string, which I'm grabbing from right here. So if you look at this alert controller, all I'm doing is adding two text fields, grabbing the name. I'm saying is whatever the first text field, which will be this one, the name, whatever the text is in there is going to be the name, and we're going to pass it in right here. Now we just do the same thing for the email. Self.email, remember this is an expression of type string, so it only accepts strings, and then we're going to put the value of email in there. So now when we insert user, these expressions in the table will be populated with these values, name and email. So now all we have to really do is just run that task. So once again, do catch, print the error if there is any. Whoops. And we want to try. We want to do self.database.run. And we're going to run an insert. It doesn't matter even if I were to select delete, since these are since this run method is overloaded, it doesn't really matter which one we select, but go ahead and select query, just because that's the right one. Query insert, that is, and we'll run this task: insert user. Now if that was successful, we'll say inserted user. All right, but right now we're not actually seeing what's in the database. So we're inserting something, but we can't even see what the database looks like. So let's go ahead and do our list users first before we move any further, just so that we can see everything that we put in. So once again, just go ahead and we're going to kind of follow the same process, except we don't need to add a task. We just need to prepare our database to show us this information. So let's just wrap this in a do block. Once again, catch and print that error. All right, so now we have to prepare our database. So we have to get the database. We have to get all the rows out of the database, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all those rows into like an array. It's gonna end up being a sequence, actually. It's gonna be a sequence of users, right? So let's go ahead and grab that real quick. So let users equal, and we're gonna do self.database.prepare. And now this is like a query. We're gonna pass in, we're preparing the database, and we're grabbing the users table. So we're gonna pass in the users table. So self.users table. I don't really know why I'm using self so much. It's just there's so many closures just randomly spread, so that's probably why. Oh, make sure you mark this with try. So now if I were to print the users, we're not going to print the users, but just so you can see, any sequence, which means that it's a type, and then it's just a bunch of rows. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go into a for each loop, just so that we can print out each user in that sequence. So for user in users, since it's a sequence, we can loop through it. We'll just print user. Oh no, we'll wrap everything in a string, and we'll say user ID is and we pass in our expression. So we'll pass in user, right? This user, but we have to access the property through our expressions. So you can subscript this user by doing it like this, and we'll just say self.user or self.id. We're gonna get their name, and we're gonna access it the same way. So user subscript self.name, and then we're going to get the email. Once again, same thing, user subscript self.email. Okay, so now if we're successful in preparing our database and grabbing those users, what we'll do is we'll go through this for each loop, and it will print out each of our users that we've inserted into the database. So first we have to insert some, and then we'll actually be able to see what we have in there. So let's go ahead and do that. I hope everything's making sense so far. So once again, if you try to create the table, you cannot create it. It already exists. If we insert a user, remember my UI is set up to take a name and an email. So name will be Kyle. Email will be kyle@kiloloco.com. And we're going to submit that. All right, inserted user. Okay, so far so good, right? I'm going to clear out all this junk in here. And then next we're just going to list the users. So far we only have this one user. Let's go ahead and add in a couple more users. So we'll say James, and we'll say Jimmy Boy at gmail.com, and then we'll say Stacy, and we'll say Stacy's super sexy and she knows it, so sexy Stacy at hotmail.com. Right, so now let's go ahead and clear this out. As you can see, we were able to successfully insert all those, and as you can see, all of our information is being stored. So that's really good. We're setting up our database now. Well, I mean, you're pretty much good from here unless you need to actually update the user or delete, and I'm just going to go through those real quick. It's pretty much the same process, but if this is all you really needed, then you're good to go. But for those of you that want to know how to update things, then let's get into that too. All right, so same thing. Update is kind of like the same thing that we did over here for insert. So we just want to create the task that we're going to run. So let's do let update user, right? And just like we did up here, we're going to access our user table, and we're going to run update instead of that. So user self.user table.update. Now, one thing that we can't do, one thing that we have to do before we do this is we have to actually specify which user we're going to be updating and what value we're going to be updating it, or what value we're going to be updating. Now we're going to be updating the email, but before we do that, we want to actually get the user. Now in here I have the user ID, and of course this is going to be a string. Now remember that our user ID is of type integer, so this user ID string won't be too much help for us right here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of user ID string, I'm going to actually create that into an integer. So user ID, and I'm going to just put it in between the guard statement so that it's going to automatically unwrap. I forgot to do my let, so let me do that. User ID is equal to integer, convert it into an integer, user ID string, and now we have a user ID that we can access. But that's not all that we need to do. Oh, don't forget the comma. That's not all that we need to do. We actually need to go through the database, and we actually have to make sure that we get the right user, because we need to have access to that user so that we can specify we want that specific user to be updated. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do, in order to do this, what we can do, there's a filter. Oh, actually, I don't think I did this right. Let me comment this out for right now. So let's say we want to get the user. So let user equals self.users table dot filter, and notice that there's a predicate in here. So what we want to do is we want this one, and we're going to pass in a predicate. So we want to just say self.id because we want to grab them by the ID is equal to our user ID. And then if that's true, then return that user back to us. And you'll notice that it's the user from the table. Alright, so now that we have that user, I actually kind of did this a little bit wrong, so I think I'm going to just delete this out because the update I forgot was a little bit different. Now we want to just go straight into our do catch block. And once again, we'll just, print our error. Alrighty, cool. And to update, what we want to do is we want to do our database self.database.run, and then I could do it like this actually. Let's keep the same format. I think I can run it like that. So let me do update user equal the same way that we did it up here, and we'll just say update, right? So we'll do we want to grab this, we have this specified user, right? So we're going to use that user dot update, and the values that we want to update right now, we're only going to just do the email. So we follow the same convention with the arrows pointing to the left, the return arrows with the left, and we'll just say self.email. Remember, that's the expression, and we're passing in the email, this email value into that column. Alright, so now what we can do is we can actually run this just like any other task. Update user, and forgot to mark it with try. So now we should be able to update any user that we see from the table. So let's go ahead and run that and see if we can update an email for one of these people. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna list the users that we have just so that I can see who I want to update. And you know what, James, went through puberty and he's feeling pretty sexy, so let's update James. Okay, so the user ID that we're gonna pass, and we're gonna say that's the user ID, is going to be 2. So let's go ahead and pass in that 2. The email that we want to change it to is sexyjames@supersexy.com. Don't go to that website. I don't know what's on it. So we want to update it. We were able to update it successfully, and we're going to list the users. And look at that. Sexy James and Sexy Stacy. Bam. Look at that. Now you're able to update. So last but not least is deleting. And deleting is probably like the easiest thing to do. So you want to definitely make sure that that you're a little bit careful. Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing as right here, where we grab a specified user by their ID, and we're gonna delete them. So let's go ahead and do that. And make sure that you convert it into an integer as well, because remember that our user ID is an integer. So let user ID equal integer of user ID string. There we go. So now we have a integer of a user ID, and we're just going to do the same thing as before, as up here, right? So we'll do let user equals self.database, or no, self.user table, my bad, dot filter, and same thing, self.database ID is equal to user ID. And then for the delete action, it's really short, but we'll follow the same conventions that we've been following. So let delete user equal user dot delete. Simple as that. Now all we have to do is go back and we can do delete. So let's just self.database.run and we're gonna do delete user. And we got to make sure that we print this error. And we also have to make sure we mark this with try. All right. Let's go ahead and run that. Everything should be good. But SQLite is very simple to work with. It's a real database as opposed to core data, whereas core data is just an object graph. This is an actual database. So let's go ahead and delete. You know what? Since James is right in the middle, and I'm not really digging that James is conceding it, I don't like him anymore. Let's go ahead and pass in that user ID that we wanted to delete. Once again, it's going to be 2. I'm going to do submit. Now we're going to do list users. All right, so now we only have 1 in 3. Now if I do an insert, and this is you know, Cody, and Cody's email is codesmell@gmail.com. We're going to submit that. We're going to list it. Notice that it does continue. It doesn't refill that 2 position. It's just like a normal database. It continues moving forward until truncated. So yeah, that's the basics of SQLite. I hope that was easy to understand. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. There's a lot of different things that you can do with sqlite.swift. It's a great wrapper around the you know, the SQLite C library, and I feel like it makes it extremely easy. You would definitely want to use this in a project where the programmer / user has control over all the data, as opposed to, you know, just creating object relational maps or graphs, where that's where core data shines. But this is more where just storing just straight up information. That's where SQLite shines. So I hope you like this tutorial. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you have any suggestions for future tutorials, feel free to leave them in the comments. I do check those. Make sure you check out all the links in the description as well. Alright guys, once again, my name is Kyle Lee, aka Kilo Loco from kiloloco.com, and as always, code passionately.